Hi, Shaurya.
Hi, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Doing good.
So you're back home again.
Again, I'm about to go again tomorrow. So
Ever since you have gone, this is your fourth time or third time?
this is my third time coming back.
Third time coming back?
Yeah.
How does it feel?
It's nice being back. I mean, I enjoy being here. I think when I'm here, there's always like a lot I want to do. So it's good to get through all that in a couple days. But yeah.
Like?
Well, last couple days, mainly just meeting friends. Yesterday we went? No, 2 days.
I think 2 days back, right?
2 days ago, me and my friends went to the Russian Banya, which is...
These are friends from your
From
school?
high school. Yeah, from high school. We went to Russian Banya, where there's 205-degree saunas and 40-degree cold plunges. And we spent some time over there, got dinner, and then did a podcast on the way back in the car.
That must be fun.
Yeah.
I want to see that.
Yeah, I'll be out in about a week, but yeah.
Yeah. 205 degrees, that must be burning your skin, right?
One of the persons inside the sauna said that last week it was 235. Because it's always
Won't it burn your
fluctuating.
skin?
No, it's hot, definitely. You'll feel uncomfortable. It won't burn your skin because you're sitting on top of a towel. So, yeah. But
Okay.
it's hot.
Nice. How long did you stay there?
It's a good question. The first time it was decently long. We didn't time it. And then we went out for a little bit, went in the steam room, hung out, ate some borscht. Do you know what borscht is?
No, I don't.
It's some Russian authentic soup kind of meal. And many times, most Russian banyas serve borscht. So it's like soup with vegetables and they had ground lamb.
Oh, so there's lamb, okay.
Yeah, as well.
So broth is lamb broth?
It is lamb broth, but I think a lot of them are even vegetable only. I think Sid told me when he was in San Francisco, he had what was it called? Broche?
Broche, you said.
Broche. They were just vegetable, but yeah, I had some of that. But the second time we went in, we stayed for 10 minutes. We put a timer on, and yeah.
It's hard to stay beyond that, I'm presuming, right?
Definitely is. I mean, I think I was a little dehydrated, so it's a little bit harder. But you want to make sure you drink a lot of water before you go.
Yeah.
You sweat a lot.
So 40 degrees you said for the water. How was that?
It was cold. I think the first time it was worse though.
Yeah.
I'm just estimating 40 degrees. I think it's 40.
Yeah.
I can't remember how much exactly, but it's
like
cold.
ice cold?
Yeah, like when you come out of it, your whole body will burn.
Oh, it's that cold.
It's interesting because if you take cold showers, you usually feel pretty good after. Like immediately when the cold shower turns off, you usually feel with adrenaline and you feel really good.
Right.
When you come out of a cold plunge, like your whole body just feels terrible. So it's interesting.
It stays like that for some time?
A couple minutes.
Yeah. And then you immediately go to your sauna, or what do you do?
We did it. I ended on cold last time. But,
you ended in cold?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Nice.
Everyone does it differently, so.
Yeah, we need to experience that once.
I'll take you on early Jan. We'll go
once we come back from Japan.
Yeah.
So talk to me more about your first semester experience. I think you just wrapped up your first semester in UMich. So how was that experience?
It was really nice. I think over time, it's just answering the question about how I want to spend my time, really. I feel like in college, you definitely have a lot of opportunities and decisions on your own about how you want to spend it. And I've hung out with all different kinds of friend groups, and I think they all approach that question in a different way. And I guess it's determining for yourself the life you want to live. And I know bits and pieces of what I want out of it. And now that we finished the fall, I'm excited to plan out the rest of winter semester in a similar way and approach work and extracurriculars and everything you want to do with your time in that way. But I think it was good overall. I met a lot of cool people, and definitely I found that at least at the university I went to, there's a lot of well-rounded people there, and it seems that most people I come across care really deeply about something, and that's something that makes me happy, that I get to surround myself with people who care about doing something with their life in any regard. It could be anything. So
understood.
Yeah.
And study-wise, was it hard than high school? Relaxed? What do you think?
I found it pretty easy, just because I think I took some easy classes this term. I had one hard class, really. But besides
that was discrete maths?
Yeah. But besides that, I had a lot more free time on my hands this semester, so that was nice.
Will that be same way next sem, or do you
Probably
think
not. I'm definitely taking some harder classes next semester, but it shouldn't be a big deal. I should be able to. It will definitely be more time spent studying, but it'll be more reflective, as like the last couple of weeks are kind of similar just because of exams. So I kind of have an idea of how to approach that, so it shouldn't be too big of a deal. But
yeah, I've been following your podcast ardently, and I was seeing all the different podcasts you shot in UMich, and I think it's going pretty well. You have improvised as well. I love that wallet game, which has become really popular now. And now I think you've added a few more elements as well, like asking a question at the end and signing on the wall. So talk to me more about it. Has your podcast gone from where you want to be to where you want to go, or has it changed for good? Anything that you'd like to highlight about your experience filming podcast in Yumesh?
I think it's interesting you mentioned that the things I've added recently are like the wallet challenge
Yeah.
and the questions I ask at the end. I think I'm glad I kind of added those elements in because I think a lesson I've learned more recently as to why certain podcasts become popular, some don't. The ones that really do become popular are very personalized in a way. And often the person watching the podcast likes the podcaster more than the guest himself because they're predictable and they can expect the same kind of theme and structure every time they click and watch it, so they kind of know what to expect. Kind of like how when you watch a TV show, it generally follows a kind of similar storyline or script, and you can expect the same kind of emotional patterns as you watch the video. And then most of these TV shows, they try to create a sort of jingle or some item or something they put inside the film that will attract other parts of your senses, so you can associate that thing with the film itself. Like, for example, a theme song for a show. Every show will always have, start of every episode will have the same theme song. And people associate that theme song with feeling the same emotional pattern as they watch that TV show. Like, think about Couple Sharma, there's that first bum, 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 bum sound effect that starts it off. Immediately, like, my mom loves watching that show. Immediately when she hears it, all her dopamine will start firing because she can expect all the comedy and laughter that's supposed to come. So they kind of associate those two things. So this is kind of a piece of that because it kind of becomes something people get used to.
Yeah.
You know, people associate like this wallet challenge with every guest that comes on. It kind of makes them all universal in a way, because I want to prevent people from just coming on because they have a cool guest versus someone who comes and watches the next one off of that. And I think adding more personalized things into there, like people who watch a podcast like Joe Rogan regularly, when someone asks them what they're doing, they say they're watching Joe Rogan. They don't say they're watching the specific guest. And the reason they say that is because they are watching Joe Rogan. It's more about the podcaster than the podcast itself or the guest themselves. So
makes sense.
I think associating some of those personalized things that are consistent episode to episode is what I've been thinking why I ask, like the die on the stand question or signing the poster or the big logo I put in the background or the anti-theft wallet challenge. I think those have kind of added a theme to it. So
makes sense. And I see that progress happening to a podcast. I see the followership has gone up. I also see the viewership has also gone up. So congratulations. And I know there are many miles to go, but it's a great start. And I'm seeing that you're enjoying your filming in Yumesh as well, the room that you found. Is it like in your dorm or is it outside your dorm?
So
that room?
The room I currently film in, there's a hallway on the 5th floor.
In your dorm, is it?
In my dorm. Okay. So my room is right here and 2 doors down. Like.
Just where your room is. So I remember where your room was.
2 doors down. There's a
lounge area.
So that's where I've been filming. But
So usually people go there to just chill or. So you kind of occupy that space for your filming. Okay.
A lot of people don't really use it. So.
Yeah. Nice. Very nice. Great. So now that your first semester is down, we are going to Japan, I think, tomorrow morning. Yeah. So what's your, what are you expecting? All set to go to Japan, packing done, itinerary made.
Yeah,
excited?
I worked on it this morning, but looks like
I've not seen it yet. That's the reason I asked. Yeah.
Gonna see on the fly. We'll put it together. I have some pieces of it done, but
nice, very nice. Excited?
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
Cool. So what have you? I know that you've been reading some books, but not that much after you went to UMass. So what have you been reading?
I finished Outlive.
You finished and done.
A couple weeks ago, I finished it.
Okay,
Took a long time.
Okay.
But I think this is the 7th book I read this year.
Yeah.
And I just started a book called A Tale of Dueling Neurosurgeons. So I'm about 90 pages through that right now. I had more free time the last week coming home, so I was able to read that and enjoy it. But it's interesting because it goes into people in the past who suffered severe brain injuries and understanding how a certain injury, if we can understand what part of the brain is affected and how it changes their behavior, we can get a lot of insight into how the brain actually works. So there's a lot of great stories in there. Stories that go all the way back to King Henry in the 1500s, King Henry II of France, who, if you don't know, had a jousting match with Montgomery, which is some other King Duke. I don't know specifics.
Mm.
And it was totally just for fun, and it wasn't anything serious. But he kind of knew Montgomery was better than him, and Montgomery had defeated him 3 times. And usually the custom is that after you're defeated 3 times, you don't challenge them again. But he kind of caught up in the ego and emotion. Like, he went for it again, and his, I think it's called a visor, had not been fitted properly. So when Montgomery went to hit him with a wooden sword, it took the visor off. But in the split second before he can realize what had happened, he'd already, the sword hit right between his 2 eyes.
Oh boy.
So he had splinters up in his eyes and a lot of problems. And he was in the bed for weeks on end. And these neurosurgeons from all across Europe were coming and seeing him, even from other countries like Spain.
Like all doctors now, you mean to say the doctors at that point?
Like the neurosurgeons of the time. They weren't called neurosurgeons, I'm sure, but they were more like interested in brains and studying the brain. And there were a couple of them back then.
That's interesting, okay.
That study. These 2 are some of the highest caliber, or what's the word for it? The best of the time, really. And they dissected him. They couldn't save him ultimately, but they did realize there was some damage to the back of his head, which had caused him to go blind.
So he went blind?
Not fully, I think. I think it would go some days, it would come back some days. It was weird. But it just really opens your eyes to how weird the brain is, and we don't really know.
Like the book so far?
Yeah, it's good.
Wonderful. I just finished reading, I think I was talking to you about Lifespan. It's right here. I'll show it to my audience here. It's Lifespan. So, have you heard about this book before?
You told me a lot about it.
Yeah, it's a wonderful book. This book is all about aging and why you age and why you should not age. So it's a very fascinating read. I think the best part I like about the book is it didn't go into periphery of explaining why we age, but going to the cellular level and explaining it that how aging happens, and predominantly proving that in different lab setup, and then creating a chapter around what you should do to reverse aging. And although the book is very scientific in nature, it talks about cell, it goes deeply into the enzymes and the cellular molecules and how cell is constructed. And also some of the remedies of how you can reverse aging is based upon some of the scientific findings that has been done in his lab and otherwise. But there is also a section dedicated about should we reverse aging. Is like more of a debate to see that, with the growing population in the world and what humans have done to the planet. So should we truly try to see if we can extend the age or reverse aging? There's a beautiful chapter on that, which I found very intriguing. And then at the end, there are very direct remedies or direct answers to some of the questions you may have in terms of what we should do if you truly believe in reverse aging. But I'll tell you one thing. You must have seen it in Outlive, which you finished now. It all boils down to discipline. So at the end of the day, we may know when you read those lot of things that are articulated in the book that you should or should not do. But end of the day, how disciplined you are, and are you a believer in doing those things on a regular basis, time and again, day after day, week after week, month after month. I think that's where the answer lies, and it was an interesting read.
Nice.
Do you think you'll read this?
Well, hopefully. I always end up making a huge list of books to get to, and I'm getting it all done. But it seems interesting. I think I'll take a break from health stuff for a little bit after Outlive.
You said you have read, this is the 8th book you're reading, right?
Currently I'm on the 8th.
And I think you have read a lot of health-related book this year, right?
I have also read Ultra Processed People there.
So Ultra Processed People, which is right here. Then you read Outlive.
Those 2, I think.
Those are the only 2. No, you also read The Sleep, right?
That was a while back.
Okay. Any other health book you have read this year?
It's a good question. I'm trying to remember what books I read this year. I think I read the HBR one.
But that was beginning of the year, right?
Yeah, I read that one. Homo Deus. I read Outlive, Ultra Processed People. 3 more. Let's see. The Forest of Enchantments.
That was a nice book.
Like
that is an epic, yeah.
What else did I read this year? Power of Now and The Goal.
Power of Now.
The Goal was a great book.
Yeah, The Goal is...
that more than 7? No, that was 7.
That takes you to 7.
That's 7. Yeah. The Goal was one of the better ones this year.
Yeah.
But,
there are 2 books on Goal. I think one was written by her daughter as well later on.
Yeah.
That is also very interesting because The Goal, as you must have remembered, it was written about 30, 40 years back when manufacturing was the key towards all industrialization. But this new book, which his daughter has written, is more about today's day and age. So it has taken a lot of project-based example and given a little different spin about how you should prioritize things and how you should execute things to succeed in life. So, and it's a small read as well. It is like half the size of the gold book.
Yeah, it was small.
Yeah, it's a quick read. Yeah.
What'd you learn from it? What'd you change your life after reading it?
I think I actually recorded a video on that as well. I think a couple of videos on both the books. I think for each book I recorded a video. I think if I have to distill it down to a few thoughts, I think first and foremost, my biggest lesson that I've learned is before reading the book, I thought people who do multitasking are they are pro. They are the people who can do many things at the same time, and I always used to admire that, and I used to thrive to do multitasking. And my biggest lesson learned is that truly when you're trying to achieve few goals in your life, you have to cut it down. You have to focus on a few. I think that if you can cut it down to one in life, it is usually not possible, not more than three. I think that's the biggest lesson learned. And if I look back, hindsight is 2020, but look back, at least we all have a family tradition of creating a list of goals for the year. And sometimes it is way too much in our hand, right? So if you have 7 things to do, and you're always trying to prioritize each one of the tasks you're trying to execute doesn't get that biggest attention. That's the biggest lesson I've learned, that if you want to truly do 7 tasks, don't try to do everything together, but try to do a few things at the same time, at once, so that you can complete it and then go and embark on the next one. So that's my biggest lesson learned.
Yeah, that's interesting because I remember the first time I really learned that idea was deep work. I read junior year, winter.
Right.
One of the first books.
I've read that book too as well, yeah.
And I like that book a lot because it touched on the same idea of you can't, if you do multiple tasks at the same time, you can't go deep into one task. And then the following summer, that same year, summer 2023, I read the book called Essentialism, which is touched on the same idea of, even on the macro level, focus on one goal in your life and not 3, because you can go deep into one goal and you can achieve bigger success. But actually in practice, I've thought about it, and I feel like at the micro level, I agree that you shouldn't multitask. Like in this hour, you should focus on one task. I also thought that it was really applicable in the macro sense that you should have one goal in life or 1 to 3 goals in life. But I feel like in practice, it's not worked out as I thought it would. Because what I see is that I've seen more success toward my goals when I have more goals at a time than less goals at a time. I'll give you an example. Like when I have summer is so much free time, so I intentionally set fewer goals so that I can actually achieve them.
I remember the 3 goal rule that you had.
3 goal rule. And then versus if I look at the last couple months, I feel like I've had 5 or 6. But I feel like when I have more at the same time, I actually do better at achieving them because I kind of enter the mindset of doing a lot at the same time. And obviously you have to kind of judge for yourself if it's working or not. I've just seen that I get more lazy when I have so many hours in the day dedicated to one thing because there's only so much you can do each thing. And there's definitely ways you can go deeper into it, but there's always a limitation you put on yourself. So it can sometimes be a lot. It doesn't work for long stretches of time, but for a 2-3 month stretch, when I gave myself 3 or 4 or 5 different things to do at the same time, I noticed that I saw more progress in each of them when I was doing them all simultaneously because I think that the skill sets in one goal are translate to other goals as well. And in that way, I've honestly, when I have a stretch of time where I'm trying to achieve a lot, I actually kind of like giving myself more to do because although you might get slightly less sleep by the time, you might slightly slip up on other things. Trying to do a lot at the same time has helped me achieve more, which is weird. I don't know how it played out that way.
So that's an interesting point. I think the book never says that you should have less goals. And my interpretation of the book, let me put it across in this way. I think you can have 7, 10 goals, but what it says is that when you try to execute on something, and if you try to do many things at the same time, there are fallacies in that. And I'll give you an example. And I used to do that before. I used to read 3 books at the same time. And I thought it was pretty cool, right? So, on a flight, you read a different book. Go to bed, you read a different book, right? Weekends, you read a different book, and you switch between those books as you want to. I think what happens is, and this is practically, I felt it as well now that I look back, and as I said, hindsight is 2020, right? So whenever you leave a book and go to the next book, there's a context switching, right? So you go into that book, let's say you go read a couple of chapters, then you switch to the third book and read a couple of chapters there. And when you come back to your first book, you have already lost a lot of the context what has happened. So what you do is, in that case, you redo a lot of your things. So let's say you're on page number 40 and you try to read, you're trying to link what you have read before, but since you have two more books in between, you have lost that link, if that makes sense. And so what happens is, traditionally you go back like 5 pages, so you go to the beginning of that particular chapter. So you're losing time that you've already spent. So that's the whole point the author was drawing. What the author was trying to say is that, look, if you want to work, even if you want to do multitask, because as you rightly said, in practical life you cannot. For example, you're in UMich today, you will have 4 subjects to study, right? Then you have your podcast on top of it. I'm sure you're a club. There's another thing that you'll do. So there's 6-7 tasks anyways on your plate, right? But in life, you cannot avoid all of those. First point is that, can you minimize to the minimum aspect? Not compromising on the goal, but what you want to do here and now before you finish and go to the next one. And second one is, even if you're doing that, can you go a little deeper so that you can get a appreciation of the problem statement better, so that when you come back next time, you do not have to redo things that you have done before. So if that makes sense. I think it's a fine balance. And to your point, I also believe that it is a very individual approach towards things. There's a macro level philosophy you can create, but every person is different, and you have to see that how you can align to that. Personally, I believe that I still do many things at the same time, but cutting down and focusing on a few, I'm able to finish my goals in the projects faster and able to achieve things. And the travel website, I did that. I just hunkered down on 1 or 2 tasks at that time, was able to get the entire travel site up in about 4 weeks time, right? Earlier, you remember me, right? I'm doing 15 things and time will go by, I'm still not able to do things. So that's my learning. But
no, that's a fair point. And I think that it depends on the person, because you're not going to tell a fat person to bulk, and you're not going to tell a skinny person to cut.
True.
If you're on one side of the spectrum, it's really about finding the median and trying to work toward what is actually the goal, right?
Yeah.
In your case with reading 3 books at the same time, if the goal is to efficiently cover complete content, then it doesn't make sense to read 3 at the same time. You're saying that you'll forget content you previously read, so you have to kind of reread and understand what's happening. But to push back against that, I think there's a benefit in reading multiple books at the same time, at least personally. Now, I don't read enough to do that. I read 1 book at the same time, but I watch 6 podcasts at the same time. And the benefit I found in that is that, again, it depends on the person. Some people hate doing that, and they want to finish one thing.
Sure.
And that's how they're able to enjoy it and cover the content good. For me, why I like watching 3 to 6 podcasts at the same time is because I draw more connections between them. And I'll learn things in a new way. I feel like it's made me more creative, because I'll see there's one podcast that's about the healthcare system, and this other podcast that's about archery, and this other podcast about wrestling, and this other one about how to achieve your goals. They're all completely different, but the benefit of watching them at the same time is that I get to think about all these things all these things are kind of circulating in my head at the same time. I found it's made me more creative, and ultimately I feel like a lot of the things I do is for the podcast today. Like, I guess that's my one goal for life, that everything I seem to do seems motivated by the podcast. In a strange way, I think I realized that like a month ago, that every time I'm doing anything, I'm thinking about how I can use this for the podcast. I found that having so many things circulating in my head has made me more creative and helped me see more connections. Yeah. And I just personally like it. I found that I enjoy that. I enjoy thinking about all kinds of topics all day. Then think about like history for 1 week, finish that podcast. Then think about mind culture for the next week. Then think about food for the next week. I think I like having all at the same time. But again, it depends on the person. There are a lot of people who can't retain knowledge that way. People who struggle consuming content in that way. And I guess it comes down to the individual what the ultimate goal is. So,
That's true. Now you mentioned podcasts. I'll bring you back again there. How many episodes you have shot now? 75?
Yeah, I filmed 76 2 days ago.
76 is 2 days ago. So this is like almost 1 per week, right? So
more than 1 per week.
More than
one per week is the minimum.
Okay, so it's like year and a half now into.
So we're in December. I started last October, so about 14 months.
14 months. Yeah. Nice, very nice. So I was seeing a few of your podcasts from UMS, and I think there was one gentleman, I'm sorry, I cannot remember his name for. I think Harpinger.
Ty Hergen reader.
Ty Harpinger. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, he was talking about autism, if I'm not wrong, right? So and you're reading the neuroscience book as well now,
Yes.
right? So talk to me more about. I think it was a very interesting episode, right? So I think he's doing some research work in the staff, right? So
Mhm.
he's trying to find ways and means of why autism happens. I believe that's what he's working
Right.
on, right? Yeah. So what have you learned there? I think what I before I go there, I think what I really like about the Umesh, all the episodes you're creating, such a diverse population you have. So from nutrition to autism to people who are in who are in sports to whatnot, right? So I think it's a very diverse population. So you have access to a lot of talent there, right? So I was very intrigued by looking at all those different people coming and talking about what they're doing in Umesh and how they are learning from the milieu as well as the ecosystem and how they're applying those to their learnings. So autism was something that really intrigued me, and I was trying to understand how he's taking a take. I presume looking at the episode, all I learned is that at this point in time, they are doing research to find out how autism happens and what can we do about it. So what have you learned from that episode?
Yeah. Just want to say, I think Ty is mainly in Down syndrome, but also autism is big too.
Oh, he's in
but
Down
it's both.
syndrome,
Though.
yeah. Okay.
He does autism too. He does.
Yeah.
He works a lot on neurological disorders, but yeah.
Yeah.
What have I learned? I guess from a lot of the episodes we kind of talked about the underlying causes of it as well as current approaches to treatment, and I guess the prevalence has been increasing over the last century or so. And again, it's up in the air as to why. For Down syndrome, it's pretty clear that the mother's age at birth has a lot to do with it. I'm pretty sure you specified that for Down syndrome in particular, that we know for a fact that...
It's a genetic thing, right?
Yeah, they're both genetic. You get them at birth. You can't get them once you already have been born. They're all...
Even autism,
disorders.
I thought it comes later as well, right?
From what I remember, these are both disorders that happen at birth, but you can...
Maybe suppress gene and then it
Yeah.
kind of, expresses itself.
I don't think you get autism after you're born. I think it's something you're born with. You just get
Mm.
diagnosed later.
Mm.
But, yeah, so both of these disorders, Down syndrome in particular, the mother's age at birth of the child has a lot to do. If the mother's older, there's a higher prevalence of Down syndrome. So that's one cause for sure. But yeah, the prevalence is increasing, and we were speculating in the car yesterday about the many reasons behind that. In terms of treatment, I think the biggest thing is helping these individuals live independent lives, and early intervention is a huge help in helping them to live close to independent lives. And I think it comes from understanding like how their brain operates, and understanding how their brain operates can help us to create educational programs that can help them to learn. And it is 100% possible it depends to how bad the situation is for the individual, but we've seen the first Down syndrome person elected into office, I think in the UK or somewhere, you can fact check that as well, and the first Down syndrome lawyer. So we are seeing these people able to live pretty independent lives, which is great. But again, it depends how bad the situation is for the individual and like how early we're able to help them out and help them in their learning phase become able to live those independent lives. But
it's very interesting. I think while I was reading the book Lifespan, right, it did speak about cell and genes in much more details. In fact, it's heavily loaded. If you do not have an appreciation to science or human science per se, it'll be a little hard read for you, but it goes really deeper into the whole concept of this. So where I was going with this is one of the aspects that the author has gone into is doing the entire gene sequencing, which is available today. In fact, you can also go and get your entire gene sequencing done, so which that what genes you have, how they express themselves, what traits you have, which can also let you know that what diseases may come and harm you in the future and what you can do proactively around it. And what interested me most is that people are now trying to manipulate those genes. I mean, there's two schools of thought. One saying that you should not play with the genes, which is the formation of life. You should leave it like that. Is one school of thought around that. Other school of thought is that look, why not? If you can sequence a gene, you can pinpoint a particular gene which is expressing itself to have, let's say, diabetes, or let's say, for example, to have cardiovascular disease, or let's say Down syndrome. if you can make that expression go away, why not, right? So that's the argument that the scientists are using on the other half. But what was very heartening for me to learn is that human beings are actually going down to those gene level therapy where you can truly see how your gene is expressing itself, and you can go and suppress it or activate it based upon how you want to make it happen. Was intriguing and very phenomenal to me. I think science for that is little further away, but we've already seen some of the experimentation coming out in life. For example, making animals in lab. We always keep hearing that, right? So making gene clone in the lab and things like that, which has already been done on pigs, rats, and whatnot, and of course in one case in human as well in China. And what science beholds there, obviously good science, I'm presuming, is something very intriguing for me to watch for. And hopefully in my lifetime, or at least in our lifetime, we can see what science can bring to bear studying those genes. So what do you think about that?
Just yeah, I think it could be really powerful in terms of if you are genetically predisposed to a certain condition, then I think there is benefit in accounting for that pre-birth. And I just think that the only concern is that if it does reach that advanced state, as you described, where you can alter genes that have even nothing to do with some kind of predisposed disorder or disease. Like, okay, now that we can edit genes, we can also edit genes favorably in terms of, okay, I want to be taller, let's edit that gene. I want to be faster, let's edit that gene.
That's so true.
I just think that to an extent, if that becomes widespreadly used, it can be a problem just because of access to technology, I think. I just think that if you have genetic engineering will probably for a period of time be only accessible to certain groups and certain populations that are wealthy, and that can create a huge gap between not only do you have people who are wealthy have access to a lot of things today, they'll also just be genetically different. And I think that's a thing that hasn't happened before. For so long, wealthy people have had access to luxuries and technologies that people of other populations have not had access to. I think at this point, if you're completely a different person, you'll almost start to feel like you're a different species in a way, and you'll look down upon other groups of people as if they're a different species. And I think that can create a weird dynamic. But again, I think that is far away. But I don't think just because of that we should be totally adverse to it, because I don't think it's ever a good idea to like run away from advancement, because you'll never succeed. And I think you should be able to use it where there are benefits to it, and I'm not against using it in certain situations where if you're predisposed to something like Down syndrome, if you're predisposed to have a higher chance of getting cancer genetically, then I think there's benefit there. I think that since it will take time to get to a stage where genetic engineering will be so easy, where you can edit genes in your body and make your nose bigger or whatever you want to do, I just think that with time there will be a lot of resistance to it because of the implications of it. So I'm hoping we'll be able to put proper regulations on it. And I mean, I don't know, I feel like maybe we'll reach a place where society will accept it, but it's again, there's a lot of variables and factors at play, and I think it's pretty far in the future for us to speculate upon it. But
that's where I think you have hit the nerve on that. I think the biggest issue is the access to technology or of this kind of science will certainly be for the richer people, right? I mean, they can actually genetically engineer what kind of children they need in the future, right? And which will further create a divide between the poor and the rich. And as rightly said, they could see themselves as a different species altogether as against the poor. So one thing that ties all of us together in the world we live today is that regardless of whether you're rich or poor, or how much money you have, or what kind of car you drive, or what kind of houses you live in, the death is a common phenomenon. Everyone can get a disease, everyone can suffer, and everyone will die one day or the other, right? And I think if you can truly genetically re-engineer your genes, and you can make some of the people to live longer than normal human span or lifespan in a more healthier fashion, uh, surely you will create a different kind of species altogether, and slowly the other species may either veer off or there'll be social unrest from an overall standpoint. But to your point, uh, we should not impede it just because of that, and I think regulation is required. But where the problem is in twofold. One, you're saying it's further away, it's not too far away. I think my opinion is it's right there. I think it's a matter of time. There's a lot of advancement done in terms of for creating genetically engineered cells and genes and all. It's not, if at all, I believe it's like a couple of decades away. It's not like.
So where do you think we'll be a couple of decades from now specifically?
I believe that, and if you read this book, I believe that you can truly extend human life. And I'm saying truly human life in the sense that they can live for a longer period of time with a right health and mindset. Right? So, for example, you may be 100, but you'll feel like 40. That is not too far long. It's actually is possible today with some of the intervention.
So what age?
I think my belief is that 125 is a easy goal.
By a few decades from now, you said?
I think we will see in a lifetime. How about that? And I think 150 could be also very easily to be seen. And my question is that it is here and now, in my opinion. It's a matter of time. Couple of decades away, it will be more popular and ubiquitously available for people to subscribe or consume upon. There are ways and means you can intervene today as well, and which are not popularly visible or viable or available, but there are ways and means you can intervene today as well. It may not be believed at a very higher frequency or a higher level, but it is available. So coming back to the point I'm trying to say, it may not be too far away. And second, this science is very distributed at this point in time. They are distributed amongst some of the pharmaceutical companies who are researching on it, which, as you know, privately owned or shareholder owned, or they could be also distributed amongst different universities, which may be run by governments and different kinds of government, right? And it's not like one central body, if I may to say that, right? So which can control and put regulations around it. And the access to this is going to be huge. It's something like AI, which is happening to AI, which is another topic we can talk about today, where there's no decentralization of this information, and the access to this will be with the elite. And that's where I believe there'll be a big social unrest. But at the same time, we should not stop researching as well. So it's a big dilemma that the society is facing at large. So that's what my thought on that would be, rather than saying it's way too far away.
What makes you so sure that we'll see? Do you know what the currently the longest lived person is?
I think 120, 125, that range. That has already been done, yeah.
And what is the average life expectancy? 76?
It varies from country to country.
Okay.
So US has actually gone down a bit, but yeah, it's in 70, between 70 and 80. I think in 75, somewhere in the middle, yeah.
Yeah. So those few people that do live to 120, they're very rare circumstances today. Like they're 1 in 8 billion almost.
Right.
So what makes you so sure that it'll be normal?
That's a great question, actually. It's awareness, right? So if I can go a little deeper on this, right? So you have to appreciate and understand how a cell is made. So, and this is like development over a period of time. It's not like today's phenomena. It's from older times, as cells were formed in this world in billions of years back, and as human being came into existence some thousands of years back. As you know, we have this Darwin's theory that, survival of the fittest, right? So be it at a human being, animal, or at a cell level, they always mutate to make sure that they can formulate a survival circuit by which they can survive. So at a highest level, if I can explain you, a cell has a gene A, which, and assume that there are two genes in a cell, gene A and gene B. Gene A job is to make sure that when the times are tough, which is like, you're going to wear and tear, you're in a disease state, at the cell level, it will stop reproducing, because the way we have survived is we reproduce. Our cells divide trillions of time in a day, and that's how we have thrived, and that's the survival circuit, so to say. But when the times are tough, they don't want you to create multiples of your cells, because it may be a tumor cell, for example, or you may be creating cells which may cause disease. So the gene A job is to make sure that it hunkers down, and it makes sure that you don't create cells when there is a difficult time. But then there is a gene B as well, which has two functions. Gene B function is to make sure that whenever the times are right, it will turn off gene A so that they can reproduce again. And it has second function as well, which is when there is a DNA breakage, which is the ultimate, at the microscopic level that you have in cell, when the DNA breaks, it also repairs the DNA. So at the highest level, if you think that a cell is going to survive by replicating in safer condition, and cell is going to survive by making sure that DNA which is getting broken, repair those DNAs like any other thing, right? You repair the DNA and you survive. And if you can do research, and which has been proved in lab already, that you can alter this gene behavior to make sure that you can create cells in a safer manner, you can remove zombie-like cells away from your body, you can reduce the noise, you can make sure that the cells can repeat time and again, you can live for much, much longer life. So that's the whole premise of it. And the intervention of that is people are getting more aware. For example, when I look at your videos today from Yuvish, what was very heartening to me, and which I was so very happy to note about, is that there is hope for the new generation. Each one of you brought in, and maybe you got the right people on your show.
Could be selective bias.
Could be a selective bias, but what I've seen is, in by and large, they are aware about, they are health conscious. They actually know what is UPF, ultra processed food. They, even if some of them had some bad habits, so to say, quote unquote, good and bad is a human perception again, but let's say there are some bad habits, they were aware it's a bad habit and they were working towards improving it. So it was phenomenal to see that there's an awareness. But coming back to my point, as you eat well, hopefully if you can eat well, if you can intervene in some of those cell formation at the highest level, what I explained to you, by taking supplements or by taking intervention medicine, or by having the right kind of exercise routine like HIIT, high intensity workout, running, for example, which we know can help your chromosomes to exist for longer, which can help your cell to function better. We can change the gene pattern over a period of time. That's number one. Number two is a medical intervention.
Before we get into medical, so your claim is that by doing all these interventions, we can reverse this aging of the gene in the cell.
We can reverse age. That's correct. Yeah.
By just before medical, just lifestyle wise, there's a way.
So great question again. See, lifestyle can take you to a greater extent, but that's where the medical part comes into play. If there are certain genes that you have got from, let's say, from hereditary, from your parents, and how they have expressed themselves, you cannot completely reverse them, and that's where the medical intervention comes into play, if that makes sense. Like, for example, there are sirtuins in our which are enzymes in the cells, and mammals have about 7 sirtuins, right? Each one has a role to play, and some is hunkering down, some is making the protein function better, some is digesting amino acids, and so on and so forth. There are 7 of those sirtuins, right?
What is a sirtuin?
These are enzymes which are in cell, which helps the cell to function in a better way, right? Okay. So like, for example, one sirtuin will help you to digest a protein better. The other sirtuin will make sure that, whenever you have a bad situation, it will hunker down. Please don't multiply the cell. It's a tumor cell. There may be a sirtuin which will go and attack the tumor cell and digest them. They'll eat the tumor cells, right? These are, which is also known as T cells, if you have heard about that, right? So sirtuins, enzymes, AMK, mTOR, which are all different enzyme or protein kinds, they are inherently available in the body. But if you have a gene expression where you're, let's say, a sirtuin 1, I'm just making it up, right? It's not expressed properly, and hence you have tumor kind of cells forming up. I'm just making it up again, right? You can scientifically intervene today to introduce sirtuin in your body, that enzyme in your body, which you have gotten for unfortunate reason, based upon your heredity or your lineage principle, you have gotten it. So scientifically that can be intervened. So to answer your question, if I come down again, by living a healthy lifestyle, which has many different components, including going to banyo, which you spoke about, right? Hot and cold exposure to body, eating less, maybe going vegetarian and things of those nature, which we can talk later, can take you from point A to point B. But if you truly want to go to the extreme, you need some intervention as well so that your genes can express in the manner you want to. So that's the reason I believe with a combination of two, your lifespan can be increased. And mind you, when I say lifespan, it is about living a healthy life. It's not about living 100 with a lot of ailments and suffering and, lying on a bed for most of the time. I'm talking about doing what you do today and having a healthy life.
That's interesting. So you're saying that with time, obviously not now, but there are a lot of studies conducted where we can literally intervene and add a missing, I don't know what it's called, Sirtuin?
Sirtuin is an example. It's an enzyme, right?
Yeah,
So Sirtuin, AMK, mTOR, these are all examples.
Right, and
Right.
these are all things that are involved in based on their prevalence or based on the damage can end up leading to death, which is what we're trying to reverse.
That's exactly what it is, right? And if you interestingly see, age is not a disease according to quote unquote human beings. Age is a natural way to wear and tear away and you finally die. But what the author is saying, age is a disease. You get cancer because you're aging. You get cardiovascular disease because the genes are not expressing in a particular manner in your body. So age is a disease, and he's fighting hard to make sure that it can be concluded as a disease. Yes, what you're saying is right. So end of the day, you're fighting against the disease known as age. And what is age? Your cells are either not functioning at the microscopic level, right? Your cells are either not functioning. Your cells are either gone rogue, which is like a zombie-like cells, which causes tumor and cancer. Your cells are not or genes are not expressing within the cell, which is causing you to have loss of memory and whatnot based upon where the cells are. So all you're doing is that if you can understand that at a cell level at different body parts, like you have a skin cell, you have a neurons as cells, you have cells for your kidney, for your different organs. If you can truly appreciate and understand that, A, you have to definitely have a lifestyle change, right? B, you can have an intervention. But I'll tell you another very dramatic part, which is where the cause of concern is. You can live, according to the authors, again in the future, you can live as unhealthily as you want to. And if you have the true medicinal intervention, you can go and intervene them at the periodic fashion. Let's say every decade you restructure your gene to make sure that they all are in the right position. It's like tuning a car, right? And you go back on the road and do what you want to. But my personal opinion is you have to lead a healthy life, which can truly extend you any which ways without any medical intervention to the fullest possible lifespan that you can have with the right health span. And then having the medical intervention which you have learned, if you can bring it to bear, you truly can live a meaningful life for a longer one. Now, whether you should live for long is another question that we can debate upon based upon what you also said. But yes, I truly believe in that.
Right. I guess one of the doubts I had previously was that I think a lot of people quote the extending of our life expectancy over the last few centuries as evidence for that will continue. And I think that a lot of things, maybe this is not related to what you said because you're giving a very scientific explanation of how cells dying you can recover that by altering the genes specifically, and you can keep recovering your broken car in a way. I think what people don't realize is just because the life expectancy 20 years ago was 40, that everyone died around the same standard deviation of 40.
I agree.
I think a lot of people died at 90 and 80 back then too. It's just there were so many more deaths at a young age that it pulled it down.
I agree.
And I think now that we've solved for all those issues, it's become more normal to live to that normal age of dying, where we all kind of caught up to the age, but that doesn't necessarily mean they'll keep going up at a linear progression. And I think that death is a very nuanced thing as to why it happens. We can categorize it into these 4 categories of the biggest killers that eventually get to like cancer, metabolic diseases, neurological disorders, cancer, I don't know,
and cardiovascular
disease.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's not so cut and dry that if you have this disease and fixing this thing will necessarily help it. I think there's so many millions of parts of our body and so many genes interacting with each other that I feel like even if you figure out that this gene is causing this, altering it would also alter something here, and then maybe that thing we didn't account for there, and it's usually like 100 different factors at the same time. And that's not to say it's impossible. In theory, it's possible, but I doubt that we'll get to such a stage where it will be easy for, as long as you have the money, that you can just live to 150 if you choose to, just because of how nuanced it is. Like we'll see people who drink alcohol every week live to 88 by chance. There are people who do that because there's so many genes that are interacting with each other that ultimately there's a lot of randomness involved too. That you can do a lot, and if you choose to live in a very healthy way, in your lifestyle choices, you have a higher likelihood or chance of living long. But I think there's so many factors at play that I just still have doubts that within the next few decades, just because there have been studies coming out and proving that this is possible, that's possible. I think sometimes we jump the gun a little bit and say that things are possible even if there's still bigger holes that we'll encounter later. There's, oh wait, that's gonna take a little bit longer than expected. This one wasn't as easy, and it could happen maybe like 100 years from now, 200 years from now. But I still think it's far away.
Yeah. So I agree. I think I was of the same belief before I read this book. To be honest with you, because I completely agree with you. I think most of the people died young in the past because of many reasons. They were fighting mostly. So they were dying young because they were in a war, fighting the opponents and dying on the field. They were also dying of different hygiene factors as well, right? So after the invention of vaccines, after the invention of cleanliness and hygiene, we have kind of eradicated that kind of disease. And I think if you see the early 20th century or the middle of 20th century, we have kind of reversed that part, which naturally, as you rightly said, has increased the human age from a world standpoint. The second point as well, which is very important to note, that some people, you may say that they smoke like a chimney. They may be drinking like nobody's business, yet they can live to 80, 90, 100 without any issue. But I think that's a very wrong example to take, and I want to tell my audience as well, because in that case, their genes are a little different.
Yeah.
And they are blessed with certain kind of genes, which you are not. So please do not take an example.
I don't recommend that.
So I just want to reiterate. I know that you don't. And please do not take examples that somebody is drinking.
The only reason I said that is because it shows that our bodies are nuanced.
That's correct. That's completely understand. But they are blessed with certain genes. And if you have a family tradition of those kind of gene expression or enzyme expression, probably you are the lucky one. You can drink, and you can eat what you want to smoke, yet your genes will not be expressing like another's body. Where my belief came into play was, and I agree with you that body is so complicated. We have trillions of cells. We have so many things we are learning. For example, I didn't go in details of all the lessons I've learned, but one of the things which I think I was highlighting to you when you came from UMesh and I was driving you back, I was so supercharged and excited. I think I almost told you what I read until then. But one of the things I learned, which human learned in fact, was the epigenome layer, which kind of, I think it is in the chromatin of the cell, which is under the nucleus. Human beings didn't even realize that is existing. I think about 30, 40 years back only they realized that. And epigenome, think of that as a software and hardware, right? You have a Mac machine. Mac machine has beautiful keyboard, great screen on high storage and everything else, but without a software that cannot function. And software tells that when you press the key K, what it has to do vis-a-vis the screen when you tap on a particular area, what it has to do, right? So that's a software driving it. In our body, epigenome is like the software, right, which controls, it tells what cell has to do. Oh, you are in skin, so your job is to secrete, your job is to grow hair, your job is to make sure that protect from UV when UV hits you, as an example, right? So all of the expression is actually stored in epigenome, and epigenome we didn't even know until if I'm not wrong, early 90s. Please fact check me on that. I think 1990s when we learned about epigenome. So to your point, we're also discovering and learning over a period of time. We may know that we have sequenced all our gene in the body. We may know everything that is existing, but for all you care, we'll 10 years, 20 years down the line, we'll learn. I completely agree with you that. But I also believe strongly that what you have learned today, because so far my learning was based upon what you said, progeny of medicine, how we have evolved, and hence we will thrive longer. But right now it is very cell or at a microscopic level definition of, hey, your cell multiplies, your cell goes rogue, your cell impacts itself. So if you can, alter that, by healthy living, by medicinal intervention, there is a hope that you can alter the whole thing. That's where my thought was became more convincing, but I'm certainly going to give it a try. Both combination of medicine and healthy lifestyle.
No, I'm sure, and I'm sure it's possible. I just think that it might. I just think that that's still a subset of issues that can happen, and even if the cell, yeah, you said going rogue or cell dying, that can cover a lot of the causes of death.
Mm-hmm.
I still think there's so many nuances within that.
Totally agree.
Well,
Totally
I think I just don't see it being common 20 years from now to live to 150.
Yeah.
Based on that.
No, I agree. I think I was listening to one of your podcast where you were talking about, I think you made a very good point where I think it was Andrew Penn, if I'm getting his name right. He's the gentleman who is learning about, he wants to do medical sciences, right, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, a lot of them do, but I'm pretty sure he's the one you're talking about.
Right, so I think you did mention a point that like human cannot be put in a lab for study from a good healthy eating standpoint, right? Because how can you, because food has a longer time span to express itself, whether it is how it is impacting your body, good or otherwise. So you cannot do clinical studies on human beings in terms of food, right? And you cannot put someone in a lab for 10 years to eat potatoes and carrots and see what happens to them after 10 years, right? So it's very hard, right, for human. And the second thing is that human you cannot control. I mean, it's a human being, their brain, their mind, they will be diverted. It's not like a clinical study in medicine that you are giving them a pill to swallow for a 12 weeks or a 6 months time period, right? So I really like that idea, and the same thing applies here as well, that who knows, because see, these things we are experimenting on rats, on rodents, at the max with pigs, for example. I've seen a case, and yes, they say that the structure of a rat could resemble a human being, but human being is a human being. And there are many a case in the case of drugs as well that it has worked wonderfully well in clinical study, phase 2, phase 1, phase 2 on animals, but miserably failed on human beings because there's so many factors goes around it. So I agree with you on that. But there's a hope, and I'm going to cling to that hope because see, there's no harm in eating healthy. There's no harm in taking for example, NMN supplement, which is going to give me the Sirtuins that I need. There's no harm in getting an NAD intervention to get the amino acid intervention. There's no harm living a healthy lifestyle where I can eat less. There's no harm in dipping in a cold plunge. It's there may be benefits which we'll learn, which they have seen in the lab, and probably I'm clinging on that hope that it can give us a longer life and the healthier one too, if that makes sense.
No, I mean, I agree, and I still do the same things because I'm also trying to live a healthy life, and
Right.
nothing against doing anything.
Right.
But yeah, I agree.
I think more than anything else, it'll give you a mental state,
Even the current life.
right, in the current life, right, and which is a big, I don't know, maybe a dopamine booster or your lifestyle change, which can have a positive mental impact on you as well, right? So.
No, easily. I mean, I feel like when I think about living healthy, sure, there's a motivation of living long, but since it's so distant, I think huge motivation is also living a good life right now, like
True.
making today
True.
a great day, and like what are all the things I can do to make my mental state today
True.
and my level of well-being the best today. And I think it's funny because the things that make you feel good today, for the most part, from a health perspective, also end up helping you live longer as well if you can learn to actually enjoy those things. So.
Okay. Right. We're back. So one of the things that you asked, and rather you questioned about, is how it will impact the society at large, right? And I recently read another book, Nexus. It's right there. I was by both of us favorite author, Yuval Noah Harari, right? So I'll be very honest. When I picked this book at the airport and I read the heading AI, I said, dude, Mr. Harari is a historian. And I have high respects for him because Sapiens was one of the best read I had, Homo Deus as well as 21 Lessons from 21st Century. I read all his 3 books, and he's done a phenomenal job in understanding how humans have evolved, what makes us going, and all of those concepts which we can bring to today's life. But AI, a historian taking a take on AI, so I was a little skeptical, to be honest with you, but it is so beautifully written. And the reason I want to bring that to bear is at the last chapter, he spoke about how we should make sure that AI can work for us. And if I recall it right, there are 4 lessons he said. And when I was thinking about what you said about medicine and the rich and poor divide and access to this, probably we can apply the same principle here as well. So if you allow me, I can see if my memory serves me right. I want to express those 4 areas that he said, and you tell me if that makes sense. Again, bringing AI to medicine world, right? The first lesson he said is benevolence. So he's saying that
bring AI to medicine world.
Yeah, so bringing those lessons to the medicine world, not AI per se.
What do you mean by medicine world?
To the concept that we are talking today, right? So
Like
the divide between rich and poor. How do you control that?
In terms of medicine.
Yeah. Okay. Let me repeat again. So when you are bringing medicine to this world to intervene age-related diseases, right?
So for longevity medicine.
For longevity, right? So then the rich and the poor divide will come into play. How do you control that so that you don't have social unrest? So I'm trying to bring some lessons from that book to here and see if that is going to make any sense. With me so far?
Yeah.
Okay. So the first lesson he said was benevolence. His concept was that AI should work for me, not against me. Like, don't go and monitor me. Don't go and do things against me. But help me out. Like, for example, it was pretty cool what he showed me yesterday evening, I believe, or this morning, yesterday evening, that how ChatGPT helps you to create your routine. So it was working for you, right? So AI was working for you. So same thing is here. So let the medicine work for us and for the greater community, not against us. So we should not use it to pollute the environment. We should not use these aspects to make sure that only the rich has access to, poor doesn't. So can we have governmental agencies playing a role in that? The second part he said,
what do you mean by not work against you?
What if we tomorrow find that just like we can have an NMN inhibitor which can include a Sirtuin to help me live longer? What if they find out that I can take the Sirtuin 7 out of you and use it as a chemical weapon?
Right? Sirtuin is a chemical weapon?
Using as Sirtuin, so using as inhibitor as a chemical weapon. So what I'm saying is that they can inject you with a medicine which can take, I'm just, God forbid not, but it can take all of the Sirtuin 7 away from you.
Oh, take it away.
Take it away from you or inhibit that to function the way it is. So I'm saying that when you are advancing science to include things, you can do also the reverse, right? So let it work. So let it not get in the hands of the rogue people. So you have to control it so that people should not use it as a weapon against humankind or against a particular race.
Isn't that inevitable? Do you think it's possible to prevent people from...
I think we should think about it. I don't know. I don't know what can be done, but as we have access to these kind of medicines or this kind of technology, I don't have an answer whether to think about controlling it. Make sense?
Yeah.
The second part he spoke about is decentralization. So he's saying that, look, do not have one company or one entity have access to all. Decentralize it. Like, for example, in this case, it should not be access to, I'm just making it up, with one privately researched pharmaceutical company. And they have access to all of these cool technologies and now they can rule the roost. Imagine, if, an hypothetical scenario. Let's say there's a hypothetical company with the name XYZ who, let's say, hypothetically assume that they have researched to find out they can truly, by injecting a medicine, they can control the AMPK, they control the mTOR, Sirtuins, and hence proven that 200 years you can live. Now this company with all the information, it becomes the most powerful entity in the world, right? And the whole intent is how, I don't know how, but you have to decentralize these powers, right? So you have to make sure that regulations, principle has to come into place, right? So I think about it. I'm maybe creating a dystopian kind of society environment, but this could very much happen, right? Imagine if I have the best of the brightest mind working for me and I have all the money in the life and I can research and get access to it in 30 years and I become invincible in a way, and I do not give it to anyone else. I become invincible in a way, immortal in a way. So it may have different impact. I can also skew the whole world. I can imbalance the whole situation. So people have to think about it as they're researching more on this.
Yeah, that would be a political mess.
Yeah. Third is mutuality. Mutuality is in the context of he's saying that, look, if you monitor me, I can also monitor you. So for example, you know how NSA is, right? They can, in AI world, it can be monitored. Every move you're making, in fact, have you heard about social currency?
Mm-hmm.
The concept, the same concept, right? Social currency where, man, you have a grading and a point system, which is based on how you behave in a society, you'll be monitored and controlled. So he's saying that if whosoever is monitoring me should be monitoring them as well. In this concept as well, if I bring it to the medicine world, it has to be mutuality in the sense that if you are giving it access to the rich, you have to have a way and mean to give it to poor as well. It should not happen that only elite group get access just because they have the money and the power, and something to think about. So if you truly devise this particular medicine out or intervention out, how do you make it more ubiquitously available is something to think about. And finally, I think it links back to your point as well, that we have to always, there's a room to learn. So let's not believe that's the end all be all. And let's believe that, what you have learned is only a small part of the bigger segment, and what we as a human being can do to make sure we can correct and self-correct this so that it progresses the society and the human beings after all. I on the fly tried to map it, but I think it kind of makes sense. I was thinking about it that while we are all racing towards making that medicine, somebody has to think about regulating and controlling it as well. That was the theme I was trying to drive.
Yeah, I'm just interested in how it will actually play out, though. Like, how do you actually accomplish these four goals? Because I don't know if you've seen any evidence from history that this is going to be our approach to it, right?
Yeah.
There's already a huge subset of people against deregulation, and there are a lot of arguments that make sense against it. But I guess it will be a political mess when this is something, if it really does become a world monopoly in a way, where one group has all the power because of the technology they own.
Yeah.
I've just never seen that in history ever work, where we're saying that thing could be bad, so let's make these rules to make it not bad. Something like mutually assured destruction can work, and I think that's what's caused today's world peace when we think about destructive technologies. I think this is an interesting one because this is not governments and countries at play, but this is like private entities at play. And I don't know if we've seen something like that in the past.
Yeah, you're right.
Where it's not the government that owns the technology, it's the private entity. So that's going to be a different dynamic we haven't seen before. But I mean, it would have to, the things you're suggesting would have to ultimately change the entire way a capitalist society works, which would cause haywire. Because is it like, what would actually work? There would be a different kind of capitalism. Would it be capitalism with nuances, or would it be something completely different that we haven't seen yet? And someone's going to come up with a new way to run the world.
Right.
And again, like I don't know how it'll play out. I don't know the timeline of it, but I don't think that any of these four things are possible in the current system.
You're right. I think you're right. I mean, I don't have an answer, but I said those are the problem statement. You're absolutely right. And if you see the world, how human beings have evolved over a period of time, there may not be exact lessons learned, but we have seen that we have always evolved. For example, when in the earlier days we have religion, right? A way to control. Why religion was created, in my opinion, I may be wrong, but it was created so that they can bring order in a society, right? They believe that there's a book of authority written by someone way above human beings, and you just follow it, right? And if you do not follow it, something bad will happen to you. That belief is inculcated in you, and even if you try to rebel, they are religious body like temple priest or pope in the case of Christianity, who will make sure that you follow it, otherwise you'll be ostracized from the society. So if you see religion was created and politics came into play, you have seen how fascism and populist economy work, right? They believe control of information, what regime says is the right. But then it evolved to form what we are in today, and mostly the countries where flourish as democratic countries, right? Which is division of power and all. But to your point, I completely agree. Will democracy, the way capitalist economy that we have today, will that take us to the next world that we are creating? I also believe, I don't think so. So we have to evolve, and I don't know what that evolvement is. Maybe we have to have another Aristotle or someone like that.
That'll probably happen.
Yeah,
someone will come up with something.
Yeah, we have to think about it.
I'm not really worried about it. I don't think religion was primarily created as a source of power. I disagree with that. I think
Okay.
it has been used as a political tool over centuries, but I don't think that's why it was created. Because even if you look at 200,000 years ago, when humans were just in tribes of like 5 to 50 people, they had religions too. And I think that at the time it could be created as a way to make order amongst the 50 people, but at the same time I don't think that was the only reason it was created. I think people genuinely believe these things from experiences they have. And I've said in a podcast before, you probably already watched me say this, but I'll say it again. Our brain is extremely sensitive. It's not specific, as in kind of like a fire alarm, right? It's more likely to tell you there's a fire when there isn't a fire, because it doesn't want to miss the one chance there actually is a fire. That's more deadly than being so specific that you always get it right, except for a couple of times where the fire goes off and it misses it completely. You want to have more false alarms and less cases where there's actually a threat there and you don't respond to it. In the same way, our brain has been designed to always more likely think there's something out to get us rather than someone's being more benevolent or trying to help us. And in the same way, we as our human brains are more, if there's a rustle in the leaves, we're more likely to think there's an animal there than there isn't there. Because of that, I genuinely think that all these people in hunter-gatherer tribes 200,000 years ago, a lot of them in the jungle will have these experiences where they'll see something and they'll be like, oh, because of that, I saw something there, I'm telling you there's something, that some angel that exists over there. They eat this mushroom they found on the planet and they start seeing spiritual hallucinations. They're going to start to think there's another dimension there. They'll see dreams and they'll make conclusions. They'll see the stars and make conclusions. I don't think it was made just to control people. I think
it's a fair point.
It was made as the human mind that's so advanced, having these experiences, they have genuine belief in it. And as these stories are told over time, there have been millions of religions in the history of the world. Even current hunter-gatherer tribes, the uncontacted tribes, they have their own form of religious belief. And over time, there have been certain individuals who come in and say that I will use that as a tool to use political power, but that's not everybody. There's a lot of religions out there that generally are created for having people live good values, and even a lot of them, these smaller religions too, people have such conviction in them because they'll have an experience in their life and they'll say because of that experience there's proof that that thing exists. So.
That's a fair point. I think where I was going was more about how the evolvement of society happened, but I agree with you. I think religion has two parts. One is obviously social order, because that's when people realize after that is formed that it's a great way to control a population to behave in a particular manner, hence they can get certain things get done by the society. But the other part which I have not spoken, which you have deeply spoken, was human beings by nature we seek truth. We are always seeking truth, and religion was a means to seek truth, right? So that is beyond our understanding how the galaxies form, why the stars are above us, right? How we are surviving in this planet, what makes us be a superior human being, right? All of those leads to seeking truth, and I think that leads to a direct path to religion, and there is a strong belief in that. But where I was going is that as society is expanding and people were forming groups and stories were getting formed, and you have to function in large society to thrive, survive. Religion was used as a tool to create a social order. That's where I was going. And when the social order was created, politics came into play, and then, as I was saying, fascism, populist have a very different perspective. That's what I was trying to highlight it. But you're right. We as human beings always seek truth. Even today, right? We all want to seek truth, right? Consciously or subconsciously.
Yeah, I agree.
Great. So, how many hours left before we leave to Japan?
What time is it?
It's 3:00.
When do we fly? 9:45.
Yeah, we leave home at 6, so about, I would say, about
15 hours.
15 hours. Yeah. So I know we can keep going on and on. Sorry, let's wait. Yeah, there is a fire truck.
Looks pretty close to here.
Is it not on our street?
I don't see anything.
Yeah, it's pretty close though.
Yeah, it's on our street.
Really? Oh, is it for the? I think it's for Christmas.
I don't think so.
It's not. Usually they come for.
Probably. It's not Christmas time yet though.
Yeah, they start coming, right? They all cannot come at the same day at the same time. There's only one fire station here.
Yeah.
So maybe because of that, yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, so 15 hours before we go to Japan. I know we can keep going on and on, but so much of work to be done before we take a flight. So before we end, any closing comments from your side?
No, I think great podcast, covered a lot of different topics, but thank you.
Thank you, Shaurya. Thanks for coming back again. I think this is the second time you're on my channel. And I look forward to again recording you when we are back from Japan with, or maybe in Japan, who knows, the fifth time, talking about our experiences in Japan and more about lifespan and breath, loon shots, all the different books we have read.
Perfect.
Thank you. Thank you for coming over. Appreciate it, man.